welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, thank you very much for listening to our show. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if you want to listen to that on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify. When you get there, rate, review. But you know you got to subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop in there on Monday. Speaking of Mondays, it is not one right now. It is a Tuesday. Sometimes we got to switch it up, but usually Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we are live on YouTube on the A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers YouTube channel. You'll find us. You'll find Lucas Panzica's explainer videos. So much good Tennessee content there and everywhere else. At Charlie_Perez, at Zach TZ, at A to Z Sports. Facebook.com/A to Z Sports. At A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. The academics out of the way, I did realize basically right before we got on here, I didn't think about it. I saw it, I've seen it for days now. I knew this was happening, but we scheduled this, Zach, because we had a conflict yesterday when we would normally do our show. The Tennessee baseball game literally starts right now, right at this exact second. So maybe we'll have some live updates from the baseball game. We are definitely going to talk about baseball. Another series win for Tony Vitello and the boys, this time in Tuscaloosa. Good stuff. But, yeah, maybe a little bit of an oversight on our part. What's up, man?
Yeah, it happens. Oddly, we had to move it back to tonight because my kid had a middle school baseball game last night that was away. It was quite a distance to drive. It was late when I got back, but it's fun for Tennessee fans right now, regardless of what they were doing this show, because everything's coming up aces and everyone's playing deep into postseasons, regardless of the sport. Lady Vols, Tennessee basketball. We know the story with baseball. Obviously, football, we got to the playoff last year, so it's fun to be in the mix. It's a lot more fun than it was 10 years ago when we were doing a different type of content between the both of us.
No doubt. It is. I feel like we've been saying this for a number of years now, and it's still true. It's a golden age for Tennessee.
It keeps getting better, right? Now, the Lady Vols now, they're improving. They're on the upswing. Got to the Sweet 16, won a game on the road at Ohio State, something the football team couldn't do in the postseason, and went through some adversity, but was able to answer a big run there. And yeah, it just keeps getting better across all sports.
Yeah, genuinely, I don't think you can say enough about what Kim Caldwell has done, because
seriously,
that was such an off the wall hire from Marshall. She, relative to the scope of that job, really had no real experience in any kind of a serious, place. She was good at where she was, but Marshall is not the most legendary program in the entire sport. And she has come in and done a really admirable job. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride, I will say that.
And she had a kid in the middle of all of it, which is even more amazing. So yeah, it's pretty stunning what she's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, so and she deserves so much credit.
And also Danny White, I know we've said it a lot, but he's made hires like that before at other schools. Nate Oates, that's how he got his start. Lance Leopold at Kansas, that was another hire back in the day by Danny White at Buffalo. The guy just sees, I don't know, I guess he sees the leadership qualities in people and their ability to lead more so than the results at the schools that they've been at. I mean, the positive results are there, but it's like, I don't care what level it's at. Is this the right person for the type of program that I envision? And I mean, he nails it almost every time. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, when Rick Barnes' retirement comes up, and people obviously talk about it, it's kind of like, oh, is this the year? Especially if he makes a Final Four, is he gonna hang it up if he finally accomplishes that? And people are saying, well, when that day comes, who are we even gonna hire? What do we? We got Danny White. I mean, I don't know. I have literally zero reason to not implicitly trust this guy at this point with the football hire that he made. Now with this Lady Vols hire that he made. I mean, the guy has a pretty dang good track record. So, hey,
the only thing I'll say about that before we get started here is that the timeline on hiring a college basketball coach these days is just odd. I mean, you've got hires being made from in season, like in some instances, to right after the season. The team's still playing in the tournament. Most of the teams that need coaches obviously aren't playing in the tournament. As teams get eliminated, maybe they're making hires then. Like we've seen that with NC State now and Will Wade. Like it's a weird time to be making a college basketball hire because you don't know what's going to be out there. So that'll be something that he has to navigate. But I'm confident he'll find a way.
Yes, if it does ultimately happen, you got to trust Danny White. I mean, look at what the guy has done. And speaking of what he has continued to cultivate at Tennessee, the basketball team is in the Sweet 16, just as we had hoped, except they got to play Kentucky for the third time this season. And I mean, I told you, Zach, obviously it makes me nervous. It makes me anxious. But man, I'm excited about this. This opportunity.
It's what you wanted,
Kentucky
from the get-go.
It's exactly what I wanted. I requested this from the team as we signed off last week. I said, please let me do a show about the third matchup with Kentucky. I want this so badly to my core. And we got it. But I can feel the entire fan base this week is like, oh man. There's a feeling across Knoxville of a bit of anxiety. But let's get into it. Let's talk about all that. It's gonna be that. We're gonna do a little spring practice check-in with the football team and of course baseball too. All of that right after I tell you about the good folks at Zen Sports. March is here. There's another sweepstakes with Zen Sports. This time it's the Big Bucket Club Sweepstakes. One grand prize winner earns a $10,000 bonus bet on the NCAA championship game or $5,000 cash. Then there's 20 smaller prize winners that'll earn a $100 bonus bet on the NCAA championship game or $50 cash each, or earn entries on each and every bet you place in March and earn 10 times entries on parlay bets. Plus, if you sign up and make your first bet with the code A2ZTN, that is ATOZTN, you'll earn 500 bonus entries into the Big Bucket Sweepstakes. So go to zensports.com/sweepstakes for the fullest rules, and you'll earn the $100 no danger first wager that we've been telling you about for so long. That is Zen Sports. Betting just got better. Go download it. Now, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 or older and located in Tennessee. $5 minimum wager to qualify for entry. Terms and conditions apply. No danger first wager limited to plus 500 odds. Qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds for any leg in the entry of at least minus 250 or worse. American odds for clarity. A wager of minus 251 does not qualify. Zen Sports, betting just got better. Shout out to them. All righty. Tennessee went into the NCAA tournament and took care of business in the first two rounds. Not a whole lot to talk about with Wofford. I mean, I think people kind of thought it was a little closer than it should have been.
Wofford played hard.
They did.
They're well coached. I like that coach.
Yes. They are a classic kind of, 12 to 15 seed sort of team that can maybe give you trouble. Tennessee went wire to wire and just kind of waxed them in general, even if it was only a 15-point win. UCLA had a really impressive showing in the first round, and there was kind of some hype. Will UCLA be able to? And Tennessee went out and handled did I say UCLA? Tennessee. Sorry, I'm losing my place there. Tennessee went out and handled UCLA relatively easily. I mean, it was an impressive showing by Tennessee, one of their best games of the season, in my personal opinion. We can start there, Zach. The game that got Tennessee to this Sweet 16 and the way that they're playing currently, how are you feeling about it?
I thought Tennessee looked like they were playing some inspired basketball. It sounds like that, just listening to the players, like they really want to win this for Rick Barnes and for themselves too, but I don't know. It feels like what we've talked about this team all season long, building up to this moment. Like we've talked about what you got to be in March. And it really feels like they are who we, said they needed to be at this point in the season. The way they're playing, Chaz Lanier really showing that confidence and just going out and playing his game, not trying to be anybody that he's not. He's more aggressive, grabbing rebounds, making shots. I mean, that's what Tennessee needs from him to go deep into this tournament and to potentially win it. So I'm very encouraged by the way they're playing. I thought that UCLA game, I thought that was going to be closer. I had like a 3-leg parlay, right? And every leg hit except UCLA plus 5.5 because I just thought that would be a tight game. that would be right around that mark. And they got close to the backdoor cover or whatever, but it was never really in doubt, right? I mean, and Tennessee just took care of business. They mucked up the game at times a little bit. They got some UCLA players in foul trouble early. That kind of aggravated Mick Cronin a bit, who said after the game that maybe things go differently in that first half if a couple of their key players aren't on the bench for an extended period of time due to the foul trouble. But that's what Tennessee does. I mean, that's part of their game, right? Like they take you out of your game by playing their game, which is just this physical brand of, they're going to get under your skin. They're going to make you fight for everything that you get on the offensive side. They're not going to make it easy. And when you do that, you get teams out of rhythm. And if your offense catches fire, you can really put teams away. This Tennessee team can. So I like it. They got to keep doing it. They got to continue on. It's only going to get harder from here. The competition's going to get better. Stages get bigger. The lights get brighter, all that stuff. And it's going to be tough. But, everybody's facing the same thing. And I think at this point, I don't know if you saw it. It's been going around social media today. There's a graphic of all the teams that are left in the Sweet 16, and it doesn't have like the logos. It just has where each player started their college career. And outside of Purdue, who apparently does not use the transfer portal at all, like it's just this. There's so much talent from all over college basketball that's on these teams. They've been in a lot of different places. So experiences all over the place. So I think everybody, I don't think anybody, especially with UConn out of the tournament, I don't think anybody is like built for this moment necessarily more so than any other program. I don't think anybody really has this big advantage. A couple of the coaches there, like Tom Izzo's and stuff, have been there and done it, but ultimately it's the players on the floor. And even though Barnes hasn't won one, I mean, he knows what it takes. He knows what you got to do. So I don't think that's anything that's going to hold this Tennessee team back. I think everybody's facing that same kind of pressure going into this, but I like the way they played against UCLA. That game made me feel more confident about them moving forward the way it played out.
I completely agree to kind of your point there about the players and experience. There's a graphic going around today that I saw. I don't remember who posted it, but it showed out of all the Sweet 16 teams and their starting fives, it showed where each player began their college career.
I think it's just Purdue, right?
And yet, it's where what? Even they had transfers.
Did they? I thought maybe they were there was one that I thought had that they were the only one that had their whole starting five was all Purdue logos. Unless I looked at that little chart wrong.
Did you send that? I was trying to think. Have a couple of
it was sent to me in a different text thread, I believe.
I looked at it earlier. I don't know where it ended up, but regardless, Tennessee, I mean, was up there with two players that had started at Tennessee. And if you are one of those guys, if you're this is your third Sweet 16. At the same time, you have like Caleb Love at Arizona. That guy played in the Final Four for UNC. Ended Coach K's career in the Final Four. And, there's across the board now, you just get this weird landscape of guys that, they've been there and done that, but they did it at, St. Mary's and then transferred over. It's crazy. So I don't think there's any market advantage there. I mean, Lamont Butler for Tennessee, he's kind of like that. I've been there, or at Kentucky, sorry. I've been there and done that guy, even though his experience at Kentucky itself is young. He in the past, at San Diego State, he's been around the block. And so there's no market advantage there. But what I saw in this game against UCLA is the stuff that's been so encouraging down the stretch, where Tennessee's backcourt has morphed, if that's the word you want to use, into a legitimately elite unit. When you have Chaz Lanier playing at the top end of his ability, dropping in 20 points, then you add in Jordan Gainey and the awesome addition that he's becoming. What do you have against UCLA? Like 15. A really nice addition there. And then you have the defensive player of the year in Sakai Ziegler, just the ultimate pest. He's so great at driving the ball. He's so great at passing the ball. And then then on certain occasions, not every single night out, but on certain occasions, he can really score the ball too. And you add all of that up, and it is an elite backcourt, and they roasted UCLA. And against Kentucky, Scott asked here, what does Tennessee do different in this game against Kentucky than the last 2 games? And to me, you have to start with this backcourt having a big game, because you look back at the stats, Chaz Lanier had meh games both times against Kentucky. He combined for 25 points total. It was 10 in one and 15 in the other, and just had a hard time getting open shots. And it really, it just wasn't, he didn't look comfortable out there. And that's credit to Kentucky. Because they haven't been good on defense kind of all year. I think they've gotten better as the year has gone along, but that has not been their strong suit. And they found a way to shut down Tennessee's primary guy, who has roasted so many teams this season. It's going to be so key in this one that Chaz Lanier shows up in the way that he has down the stretch. So key against Kentucky, because, Lamont Butler is going to bring it. You got killed by Kobe Brea in the game at Rupp Arena. You had a lead in the final couple of minutes in Rupp Arena, and then he goes off. Of course, it's just a role player guy that's out there. It wasn't one of the stars, although Jackson Robinson, I think, in that game put up like 17 on Tennessee or something, had a good game. But, there's just things you're going to have to do here, and we can start with Chaz Lanier playing like he has in a bunch of games late in this season so far. That is A1A to me. And you go down the list from there. I don't know if you have anything else to say about the UCLA game. I think, just like you, the way they played is encouraging going into this Kentucky game. I am one that does not go, oh, it's so difficult to beat a team 3 times. I kind of go, you already beat us twice. You probably have something figured out here. It is difficult to beat a team twice. That is true. And you look back in years past where Tennessee played Kentucky 3 times, and in none of those, I think back to 22 when Tennessee won the SEC championship game. In none of those did Tennessee sweep Kentucky through all 3 games. The championship year, you swapped games during the regular season. You beat them in the SEC tournament on the way to the championship. And so it is, historically, it is tough to beat teams 3 times, but they also beat you twice already. So they have your number in some way, form, or fashion, and you can't forget that. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else in the UCLA game before we move into like the true Kentucky preview, Zach.
No, it's on the Kentucky at this point. Like you said, they took care of business against UCLA. I think in this Kentucky game, those first 2 games are so, like, Tennessee won the rebound battle in both games. They won the turnover battle in the first game by a decent margin, I think. And they just didn't hit shots, and Kentucky did. And Kentucky shot 50%, I think, both games, right, from the field. Tennessee shot something like 35% the first game. Second game, I think Kentucky hits 12 of 24 threes, which is a pretty impressive clip, right? Like, you don't see that a lot, shooting 50% on that many attempts, and Tennessee was like 3 of 18. That's the game, right? To me, everybody's, it's been this narrative about it. It's a bad matchup for Tennessee. It's a bad matchup. That's what everybody said the first 2 times, and I don't know if I kind of maybe bought into that a little bit, but Rick Barnes on Vol Calls, last night, Monday night, said, I don't think it's a bad matchup. I don't think that at all is what he said. Like, pretty much what I just said is, like, it came down to they hit shots and Tennessee didn't. I don't think there's anything really crazy that to analyze when it comes to this. You out-rebounded them both games. That's usually what you typically look at, right? When you lose a close game is who won the rebounding battle. And you did that. You got to hit the shots when they're there, when they're open. And if they're all over Chaz, who's got a quick release and can shoot as soon as he gets the ball from anywhere on the floor, and is your best shooter on the team, if they're taking the shot away from him, then other guys will have to step up. Gainey's going to have to hit shots. Ziegler's going to have to hit shots. If they just hit their shots, and I have a hard time believing, can Kentucky actually shoot that well 3 games in a row against Tennessee? Like, I didn't think they'd do it a second time in a row.
But and shoot that well 2 games in a row. They had an amazing shooting night against Illinois this past game. Can they replicate that against Tennessee?
I think that's the whole game.
Would be the third time this season.
Elias there, like Elias says there in the comments, 12 from 24 from 3 will get you beat by damn near anyone, and that's true, especially when you only hit 3 of 18. I mean, what is that? That's a 27-point difference right there. I mean, that's really hard to overcome. It's impressive the game was as close as it was, to be honest, in that second matchup. But I don't think there's really anything. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. You just got to go out and hit shots in Indianapolis. That's all there is to it. Play your game, play tough defense like you always do. And I don't. It would amaze me if Kentucky shoots 50% from the field like that for a third game in a row against Tennessee.
I agree. That would be crazy. And surely Tennessee learned something defensively. Because what was tough to watch in those games was Ziegler's struggle. And, for some reason, it was like they were a step slow on defense, where normally they are just so hellacious.
Well, that first game was right after that Auburn game. It was I believe it was a Tuesday after playing on Saturday. And that Auburn game was tough. It was physical. I mean, that was a defensive slugfest, low-scoring game that I think really took a lot out of Tennessee. And that's not an excuse. I mean, you got to go play that game and get ready for the next one. But I think that probably played a factor. And this time you played Saturday, so you've got all this rest leading up to Friday's game. You're going to be as rested as you've been out of any of these matchups against Kentucky. So I think that should make a difference, I think.
I hope so. I hope it definitely does. Because I think something that you've seen specifically with Chaz Lanier is fatigue on his part in some of these games. And you're going to have nearly 7 days. I mean, pretty much 6 full days of rest here before this game. It's pretty much 8:00 on Friday night. And you played at, I was thinking midnight on Saturday for whatever reason. So pretty much 6 days of rest here. Kentucky's going to have one less day. They played on Sunday night. And when you start with Kentucky in this matchup, all of the teams that Tennessee has played this sort of play in this general style that Kentucky does. And you look through the entire season, Tennessee is maybe 2-3 against those teams. And the ones that I think about are Vandy. You won one at home. You lost one at home. Mizzou, you won that one at home, and then you lost twice to Kentucky. And they all play in a somewhat similar style, big volume and shooting, and this sort of they really press on offense, don't play a ton of defense. And when that's not great that you lost more of those than you won. Also, in every single one of those, you trailed. And, I mean, against Mizzou, what'd you trail by? Like 16 at one point? And that was at home.
Yeah.
That was in Thompson Bowling. And Tennessee put together like a 60-point second half to win that one, which Tennessee can have a 60-point half. And so I look at this. You're going to have one of your better games of the season here to beat Kentucky and not flop for a third time against them. I do think your chances are better than not that you will have your best performance that you've had against Kentucky in this one. Just the odds, just surely. On the third time, you're not going to come with this crap performance once again. And to me, it's 2 primary things. One that I've already mentioned. Your elite backcourt has to win. Chaz Lanier has to have a big game. ZZ has to play great defense against Lamont Butler. You have to shut down a Kobe. You can't have these role players drop 25 points. Kobe Brea had like 23 against Illinois. That cannot happen in this game. Jemai Mashak, put him on that guy. You have to have Gainey play great defense. Your elite backcourt has to beat their good backcourt. I don't think they have an elite backcourt. Lamont Butler is elite, but their entire unit there is not as good as yours. They have to win here. Then you have to win in the front court too. Owe is their top scorer, like 16 points a game or something. He played decently against you in the last 2 games. Okpara has to play great defense down low. He has to rebound. Igor has to rebound. So Igor had 2 big scoring games against Kentucky in the past 2 matchups, like 19 in that one in Lexington. He was kind of the only dude really scoring the ball for you, frankly. That can't be the case.
No.
I hope he contributes 10. That would be awesome. But the main thing I hope he contributes is solid defense down low and rebounding. And if you win with your backcourt, you rebound the basketball and you play great defense down low, I see the Tennessee win by 5 to 15. If you do both of those things. If you do one, primarily if your backcourt plays really well, I think that's a Tennessee win. If only your front court plays well, I would lean more Kentucky because that means you probably got roasted by Lamont Butler and, they probably rain 3s on you. Obviously, if you do neither of those well, there's a bad loss here in the cards for you. I don't foresee that one happening, but these guys got to come out of fire. You have to. I mean, how do you, after the way that Kentucky embarrassed you this season, how are you not playing the most inspired game that you've played all season? I hope they do. I think they will. And if you do play that inspired game, like I said, I think a multiple possession win here for Tennessee is not just in the cards. I think it's likely if Tennessee plays its best game. I mean, look at the metrics. By the metrics, which are just numbers on paper, but by the metrics, Tennessee is a decently superior team to Kentucky. And you got to do it. This has to be the one. You cannot end Zakai Ziegler's career at Tennessee going out losing to Kentucky. And I love this. I saw this this reply on Twitter. It was a tweet about the game, and I saw somebody say, "There's no way that Tennessee will lose to Kentucky in a football stadium." And I was like, actually, that's great. And Tennessee has not lost to Kentucky in a football stadium very often, if at all. But if you can come and do that, this is not just a win, but you'll win in an impressive fashion and be feeling good going into the Elite Eight. And I don't know how you feel about it, Zach. Do you think they can do it?
Yeah, well, for the football thing, we did learn that Trey Smith will be in attendance, so maybe that'll bring some good luck towards Tennessee. But I think the mentality thing you were kind of hitting on a little bit there about being inspired. I think that's going to be a big part of this. Like, I mean, we know Tennessee can beat Kentucky. It's not like, oh my goodness, this is like the Florida, like you're playing Florida, who you beat once. Oddly enough, I feel more comfortable playing Kentucky than I would Florida right now, just because of the matchup and the way Florida's played at times. Though they didn't have an easy route to the Sweet 16 by any means. But I like being in Tennessee's position because it is you're 0-2 against this team that you can beat. You've beaten in the past. Before the season, like what it's like to beat Kentucky. It's not like there's some monkey on your back that you got to get off. It's just the games didn't go your way. If you're Kentucky, you're 2-0. You're pretty overconfident going into this game, right? Because you beat them. So. Lamont Butler is guaranteed to win already, right? Like after the Illinois game, he said we're going to win that game. Tennessee's obviously heard that. I've written about it. Everybody's writing about it. It's all the quotes out there everywhere. Zakai Ziegler's well aware of what was said. And, it's kind of like Austin Price said on Ramon, Kayla, and Will on 104.5 The Zone this morning. He doesn't need, anything to light his fire extra, but it doesn't hurt either. Like he's a guy that thrives on kind of that motivation and playing that style of basketball. He's had to his entire life. He's been doubted his entire life. He's had a chip on his shoulder his entire life. This is just going to add to it. So I think Tennessee should be the more inspired team just because, yes, you are trying to beat a team that's beat you twice already. So you want to prove that you can beat them. You want to get back to the Elite Eight. And you want to shut this guy up that guaranteed a win. I don't know why he did that. I don't understand why anyone ever does that. All you do is give the other team a little bit of fuel, a little bit of something to get them through those tough late moments in the game where everybody's tired and you can kind of go to that for that motivation to get you through the end. I think it was foolish on his part. I mean, you would never see, I don't think, a Tennessee player under Rick Barnes doing something like that. If they did, he would definitely not be very happy about it. But mentality-wise, I like where Tennessee comes into this game. Just like I said, the way they played against UCLA really showed me that this team's locked in and focused on accomplishing this mission. And that doesn't mean they are going to. I mean, we don't know how the games are going to play out, as everybody's got the same goal right now. And there's other teams that are playing inspired basketball right now too, that they really want to win for their program and their coach. And, we'll see how it plays out here in the coming weeks. But as far as this matchup, I just like where Tennessee's mentality is at. I don't think it was in quite the right place at times this year. Whether that was just mental fatigue from the style that the Rick Barnes teams play. It's a long season. You're going to have games like that, especially as tough as the SEC was this season. But you don't into a tournament winner takes all game. I like the Rick Barnes team in this matchup to leave it all on the floor and figure out a way to grind it out.
I do too. And I think an element that also at least deserves a mention without the whole funny Kentucky football piece, playing in a football stadium is weird. I will say I was at the last Sweet 16 that Tennessee played in Indianapolis in Lucas Oil, and it is this odd setup where they curtain off half the stadium, and then you play on one end, and the seats, instead of steep like a typical basketball arena, are pretty flat like a football stadium. And even like we sat like in the sort of 200 level near midcourt, and you're still a really long way away, even though they were kind of good seats, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there's tons and tons of seats. There's going to be a lot of people there. And you always hear those games like at the Final Four when it's in a football stadium every time that the depth perception can be thrown off. I saw folks from Kentucky actually tweeting about how they played really poorly in Indianapolis. They're like 1-6 all time playing in games in Indy. I just happened to be at the one that they won. They beat Louisville that night.
Lucky you.
Yes. And this is something I haven't heard anybody mention. I think it's a little bit of a deep cut here. But so, like I said, I was at that game. And that setup was Tennessee played Michigan in the first game, and Louisville played Kentucky in the second game. And that's one of the wildest basketball games I've ever been to. It was absolutely insane for both fan bases. Obviously, they're both close to Indianapolis, both two of the most insane basketball fan bases in America. They converged on Indianapolis. That first game, Tennessee fans had like a mild number of tickets. He ultimately lost on the no charge that I'm still bitter about to this day against Michigan. And then that second game, a lot of Michigan and Tennessee fans either filed out, and we went to like the bathroom in between. Kentucky fans immediately went and took our seats, and we had to come back and kick them out of our seats and go like, "Hey, buddy, I'm going to stay here and watch your game. You got to get out of here." They took over. And here's a factor. Tennessee plays first against Kentucky, and Purdue is also going to be there for that second game. And this is purely a theory on my part. Purdue's going to bring a lot of fans. Purdue's like 45 minutes, an hour from Indianapolis. It's like pretty close. They're going to bring a ton of fans. And Tennessee-Kentucky will be the game that files out. And then the fans for the second game will be able to file in. And so I wonder if that will limit the amount of Kentucky fans that you would have gotten if they came in, sniped tickets from people leaving and for the second game and took over like that. Does that make sense, Zach? Like you'll have Purdue fans in there also, and Houston fans, where if Tennessee played second there, it would be almost entirely Kentucky fans that are, a bunch of them probably waited outside to scalp tickets from the people from the first game. And I think you're actually, to a certain extent, limiting the amount of Kentucky fans that would be there. There's going to be a ton. They're going to take that place over. Do not get me wrong. But I think it's not as bad as it would have been if you played in that second game. So just from my experience that first time where they descended so heavily and took over because it was the late game, they're not going to have a chance to do that. Purdue is going to bring a ton of fans. Houston's probably going to bring a decent number. They have a good fan base. And obviously Tennessee's going to bring as much as we can. So maybe it won't be as Kentucky home game as I'm thinking it might.
Yeah,
and
I haven't really thought about it being. I mean, obviously, it's close to Lexington and Kentucky in general, so there's going to be a ton of Kentucky fans there. But I haven't thought of it as being like a road type atmosphere. I think of it being more like I don't know, like 60-40 maybe.
I hope it is. That's what I'm hoping for.
60% Kentucky fans.
And here's something I was thinking about. Who are the Purdue fans cheering for?
I was wondering that too.
Because I kind of feel like it would be Tennessee. But I don't know.
Maybe
we've sort of created like a weird rivalry.
It could be one-sided though, because Tennessee always loses to Purdue on some weird BS call in every sport, and Purdue fans be a lot of Purdue fans. A lot of Purdue fans aren't sitting on Twitter all day, or sports fans in general, right? Like that's only a section of your fan base that's doing that. A lot of those fans might be completely oblivious that Tennessee absolutely hates Purdue in any sport.
Probably.
Yeah. But I don't know. That's interesting. I think Kentucky's a lot easier to root against, just in general. They're like a Duke or, a UNC, one of those teams where if you don't love them, you probably are rooting against them.
Yeah, and it would probably be close to neutral, where they're just, kind of fun third-party observers. That's how I am usually at the SEC tournament and games that I don't have a stake in. It's just like, I'm hoping for the fun outcome.
Yeah,
and then if it's Kentucky playing, I'm rooting against Kentucky. So we'll see there. But if you can make it 60-40, that's a huge accomplishment. I'm thinking more 70-30, probably, realistically speaking, when you add in maybe the Purdue fans that cheer against the Houston fans.
Yeah, honestly, they'll probably all cheer for Kentucky. You got to think, actually, now that I think about it, because they're going to play the winner of that game, and I don't think anybody's excited about playing Rick Barnes. Just the physicality of Tennessee in the tournament, like that's a game that's going to be physical, slug. I mean, like we always reference that Duke Tennessee Sweet 16 game a couple of years, or was it Sweet 16 or whatever round that was?
Second round.
So yeah, I think I think a lot of teams would probably prefer to play Kentucky than Tennessee in this tournament, just because of the style of play.
Well, we'll see how much any of that is a factor. I
hit shots, and that's all that will matter.
Well, exactly. And this is interesting. Elias says, looking at analysis, and I confirm the veracity of this, but there is a claim that they've measured a drop in 3-point percentage of around 3% when playing in domes.
Well, that would go to what you said earlier about the depth perception and it being a little more difficult. I could see that. I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah. It's a weird feeling. It's an odd venue. I don't really know why they do that for
I don't
rounds.
either. I mean, they've always done it in the Final Four. I mean, dating back to the early 80s, Michael Jordan won a championship in the Superdome, but that does seem early to do that in the Sweet 16 Elite 8. But if you're selling the tickets, I mean, if the demand's there, I guess I get it.
Yeah, but I remember this too from that game. Obviously, Kentucky and Louisville, it was packed to the absolute walls. And there were literally seats that could not see, that were just like fully obscured views. Going for that one, going for like $500 or whatever. I don't know what the tickets are going for.
Buy that seat and go stand in the concourse, I guess, and watch it.
Maybe. Yeah. But it's going to be interesting. And you're going to be fighting a slight lean to a home crowd. But of course, Tennessee fans are going to get really loud if Tennessee does big things.
It's going to be a chippy
game,
doubt
about it.
Period. I'm sure it'll be chippy between fans. It'll be a chippy environment, I think.
The way it's officiated matters.
Oh yeah.
If it is a lot.
Yeah, Tennessee got to stay out of foul trouble too.
Yes, a lot of games in the NCAA tournament lean more towards light officiating, which is, in my opinion, good for everybody.
Definitely good for Tennessee.
Less. Yes, I mean, if Tennessee's last trip to Indianapolis, we want less ref intervention. So I hope that it's that, and just protect the perimeter like you have all season against everybody except Kentucky. rebound the basketball, and score the basketball, especially to Chaz Lanier. Not to put undue pressure on the kid, but we gotta lean on you, big man. Like you gotta.
I think he's embracing
gotta
it at
come
this
through.
point, though. It seems like he is. It seems like he's got a different demeanor at times. I don't know. It's pretty crazy. I want to say that we've been like critical of Chaz Lanier this season, but we've pointed out. I mean, I feel like we've been fair to him while pointing out, like, hey, these are the things he needs to do better. He needs to improve on if Tennessee's going to make a run, right? Like, it's like kind of need you to step up. It is what it is, but yeah, I feel like he's done that here going into this tournament and responded pretty well to all of that, and that's tough for a guy that came from where he came from, North Florida, not really playing in these types of games, the experience that he gained all season playing in the SEC. And it feels like he kind of wants that now. Like he's in a good spot now where he's kind of been through it. He knows what it's all about. He knows what it takes. But all that criticism we gave him, then he, single season record for 3-pointers at Tennessee. I mean, I felt like that was something that kind of snuck up on us. I don't know. Maybe not you, but it felt like it snuck up on me a little bit this weekend.
Yeah. Everything with this team, the way all season long, they have impressed me more because if you go back and listen to our show preseason, it was kind of like, I feel like they'll make the tournament, probably be like a 7 seed. And I've talked about this a bunch in the last few weeks, and it's super impressive at this point. By the metrics, check KenPom, this is by a decent margin at this point. This is Rick Barnes' best team ever at Tennessee. I don't know what they were like at Texas. But at Tennessee, this is better than last year. The scoring efficiency, and I think the scoring balance this year, without a doubt, because you're not leaning on Dalton Connect all the time. The scoring balance in general, and where you can have a game where Lanier is playing well and you have Gainey providing, and sometimes you can add Ziegler to that, sometimes Igor too. And you have more scoring balance, and then the defense is as good as it's been in past years.
Yeah.
It really has been truly impressive all the way around. And if Lanier embraces this as much as it seems like he is, steps up, has a huge performance, gutsy performance, oh my, he'll be a legend. He'll truly be a legend. It'll be like this game. To me, they obviously don't have to win on a last second shot, and I would prefer that they don't, frankly. But you go out there and you play a really good game in this spot to make an Elite Eight against Kentucky. You're a legend. You're a legend forever. In Tennessee sports lore, you will be remembered as, remember that 30-point game Chaz Lanier had to take Tennessee to an Elite Eight over Kentucky. And especially, I'll speak directly to the Tennessee fans that are having big-time anxiety this week. Because I wanted this so badly. I wanted it in the SEC tournament. I wanted to play Kentucky. And I think if you had beaten Ole Miss, we would have probably crossed paths with Kentucky. So a little, serendipitous thing there that we ultimately played them in the tournament. But this game, if you win it, will be one of the finest wins in the history of this program. You will get to dunk directly in the face of Kentucky fans for, frankly, it's not just a year or something like that. It will be until they do something better, which in recent Kentucky basketball history has been a very long time. They haven't made a Sweet 16 in 6 years. And you'll just be able to hold that over their head. And if you go on from there and make a Final Four, you could rag on Kentucky fans for the rest of time in what's about to happen in the next week. Like, it would be they would have to shut up forever about you don't have any Final Fours, and blah, blah, blah. That's what they say all the time. The opportunity that you have here to go, we beat you to make it to an Elite Eight. And then if you make the Final Four, you go, we beat you on the way to a Final Four. You will be able to hang that over Kentucky fans' heads for the rest of time. This could be one of the great weeks in the history of Tennessee sports. With that said, you could also lose. And so I cannot take that anxiety away from you. I am sorry. It will be painful.
Well, I did not expect that inspirational message at the very end there.
I cannot take that piece away from you. It just is what it is. But to me, the trade-off here in how amazing this will be if you win is more than worth the potential pain. Yeah. Hey, if they make it to an Elite Eight, that's a miracle season with their first-year coach, and they just had your number this year. So what? It's painful. It would suck if that's the way that Zakai Ziegler goes out. It'll be a bitter pill to swallow. There is no doubt about that at all. But the glory that you will have if you win this to beat Kentucky to make an Elite Eight. I can't say that enough. Please realize that's what's on the line here. Like, Kentucky fans do nothing but rag Tennessee fans about how they can't make it far in March. And you would be beating them to make it far in March. Like, that is what's on the line. So just hopefully that helps a little bit. To me, the trade-off is more than worth it. I'm very excited about this. And with that said, Zach, prediction. Will Tennessee be beating Kentucky on Friday night for all the glory?
Well, I'm going to emotionally hedge and bet wager money that Kentucky will win. But I think Tennessee wins. And I know I said that the second time that they played, but like I said, I like the way Tennessee's playing. I like their mentality. I like the way Chaz Lanier is playing. I think that's what gives me a lot of confidence, the way he played against UCLA. Just to spot this team's in, how focused they are. We get deeper into the tournament. Who knows? If you win this, you play Houston in the Elite Eight, or God forbid Purdue, even though that's probably a better matchup. But it's Purdue. If you get to a Final Four, I mean, those are going to be tough toss-up matchups that, look, it might come down to a last-second shot, and you got to hope the ball bounces your way. But in this matchup, I think Tennessee's the better team, even though they've lost to Kentucky twice this year. I think that's just been kind of I don't want to say an anomaly. It's just things really didn't go your way. You had bad shooting nights. They were on fire. We've seen that in college basketball plenty of times in our lives, and that doesn't always tell you who the better team is. So I feel pretty confident Tennessee will win. I don't know. I'm like you. It could be 5. It could be 15. I really don't know what to expect there, but I do think they win, and I don't think it comes down to a last-second shot. And to follow up on what you were talking about with Kentucky fans, it really the cherry on top, just Kentucky fans are going to celebrate making a Sweet 16 no matter what in Mark Pope's first season. But if they lose to Tennessee and Tennessee goes to the Elite Eight, and if Arkansas and Cal make the Elite Eight, who they play, Texas,
and if
Tech,
BYU make it,
yeah, and BYU after Mark Pope left there, that would really put a damper on their entire season. It would be tough for them to even celebrate the fact that they made it to the Sweet 16 with all that happening. So a lot of potential here for Kentucky fans to be really upset at the end of this weekend, and obviously that's what we're rooting for.
No doubt. I also agree. I do think that Tennessee wins this game. They finally play the complete game against Kentucky. The thing that I just don't know that I can call for is that Kentucky has a bad game. Obviously, that would be ideal, is that you play great, they play poorly. It would probably be a pretty decent win for Tennessee if that ended up being the case. I think Kentucky fans really fear that. Hence, they've been bringing up that, like, oh, we're only 1-6 in Indy and yada, yada.
Well, their players running their mouth about, or at least one player. I don't think that helps at all, the mentality in that locker room.
That was an odd decision on Lamont Butler's part, but I think Tennessee is going to be uber motivated. As I said, it's just so hard to imagine that that's the way Zakai Ziegler goes out. And sports are never perfect, and things like that can definitely happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that at the end of the day, Tennessee does, the third time's a charm, and you finally beat Kentucky. You should have beat them the first 2 times. As we've touched on, you kind of had these anomalous games where weird stuff happened. Is it a great matchup for Tennessee? No. They're a little uncomfortable playing against teams that play like Kentucky. There's no doubt about that. But they've played plenty of games where they feel a little uncomfortable, like against Missouri. You won that game. Vandy, you won that game. Like, you can do it. And I have
more
faith.
Uncomfortable.
Right. I mean, that's exactly it. Go out there and press these guys. Jackson Robinson is out for the season. Lamont Butler's shoulder is not 100%. And go and take advantage of that, because Jackson Robinson dropped, I think it was 17 points in one of these games on you, and you're going to have a real chance that I've heard some analysis. I've been listening to a lot of analysis of this game leading up just to see what national guys are saying. And a narrative that I've heard brought up a lot is like, surely at some point the injuries catch up with UK. Like, surely. And maybe this is that game. Finally, you're better than Illinois. You can have a better game than Illinois did against them. You're better on defense. And I call for a blowout or anything like that? No. I think it's going to be a close game, but I could see it being a close game. Maybe you lead for a lot of the game, and then it finally comes down to it, and you're ahead by enough that they have to foul you in the final couple of minutes. And through free throws, you end up winning by like 7. Is how I could see it unfolding, and make it back to the Elite Eight for the second year in a row. I believe last year, I think we both predicted that Tennessee would beat Creighton. That ended up happening. So our track record is not too bad in this spot. So hopefully that happens. Boy, it's just like butterflies in your stomach. You're just, oh man, what? Like I said, my feeling is what an opportunity. How great it would be if you can actually win this game. And just come on down to my side. It's okay. You don't have to be crumpled up in the fetal position. Stinking half of my family, my dad's entire side of the family is Kentucky fans. He himself is not one, obviously. But there, a bunch of them are from Kentucky. And I just want to dunk on my relatives. That's all. Anywho. All right. That is that with the Tennessee-Kentucky game. We shall see Friday, 7:39 p.m. Now, just super quickly, let's touch on Josh Heupel talked about his team and spring practice today, Zach. And as is typically the case, not exactly the most compelling quotes on planet Earth, but he did have a little bit to say, and we just wanted to cover it really quickly. I know after Tennessee basketball checks out in whichever way, winning a championship or they lose, everybody turns to spring football, so we do want to keep tabs on it. What did Heupel have to say today, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, it's typical. He said a lot without saying much of anything, which is kind of what he usually does.
Classic.
But I thought he was asked about Braylon Staley, a wide receiver, redshirt freshman that played a lot of snaps in that Ohio State game. I went back and looked, and in that playoff game, DeStwirl was hurt. He ended up playing, I think, like 50, 51 snaps or something. It was quite a few snaps, and he had not played anywhere close to that throughout the season. So I thought it was a really great experience for him leading into a season where he's going to play a big role in this offense. But with all the attention on Mike Matthews, I really think Braylon Staley could be the X factor for this team. I mean, Matthews has going to play a critical role in this offense, and you need him to. But Braylon Staley's in the slot, man. We've seen how dangerous that position to be in this Tennessee offense, especially if the receiver and the quarterback are on the same page. We've talked about this at length before. Tennessee loves these choice routes, and you've got to be on the same page as quarterback. You've got to see the defense through the exact same lens. Like, you've got to know when to cut your route off. You got to know when to take it vertical. Otherwise, that's how you get these 40-yard passes downfield and there's nobody around. And it's because the quarterback saw it differently than the receiver. That's what Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman and even Velus Jones with Hooker in 21 and Javonte Payton, some of those guys did so well that we've seen some struggles these last couple of years, and which is, one, it's proof that it's not a plug-and-play offense. You got to have skills. You got to be able to play the receiver position to thrive in this offense. You can't just show up at Tennessee and be Jalen Hyatt. Like, that's not going to happen. But Heupel talked today about how he's proud. I mean, look, let me preface this first with this Tennessee coaching staff will be transparent at times. Outside of somebody like Joey Hosley, and even he will at times, these coaches will say when players aren't being consistent, and that's what's keeping them from playing more. That we heard it about Chris Brazzell a little bit last year, and certainly he was up and down at times. So they'll be a little transparent in that area. So the fact that Heupel came out today and said, praise Staley for being super consistent, talking about the way he's able to read coverages, getting to the right spots on the field, all that kind of stuff that you've got to be able to do in this offense. Like, that's super encouraging. Listening to Staley talk today to the media, it seems like he's really understood the opportunity that he has in front of him this season, and he's not taking it for granted. Like, he wants to go take it, right? Like, in that position, that's what Jalen Hyatt did in 22 after he didn't, have the success that he wanted in 21. He had to go out there and just get better and put the work in, and he had to go take it. Like, he had to go be that guy. And it really feels like Staley has that mentality. Honestly, it feels like a lot of guys in this offense have that mentality in that wide receiver group, from Matthews to Brazel to Boo Carter, who's going to see time, to even like the freshmen like Travis Smith and Radarius Jackson, who I think could also be a pleasant surprise, maybe as a true freshman. But I think Staley is a guy that, Matthews gets a lot of the attention, Travis Smith. Staley's a really talented guy. I mean, you saw some of the clips last summer, like his dad posted, of some of the catches that he would make. And, like, it's a route on air, but what he was doing with his body in the air, the way he was able to kind of go up and get these balls, it was really kind of Ryan Williams-like. I thought some of the stuff that you can see that he's capable of doing. And if he can put that together on the field in game action, that's really exciting for this offense. Nico was young at quarterback last season, and I don't think he had the help that he needed to really thrive in that offense, right? Like, you love Brew McCoy, you love Squirrel White, but Brew was limited in his speed. I think Squirrel was probably limited in what he could do route-wise. Not taking anything away from those guys. They were great players for Tennessee, but I don't think you had the talent to really just, help Nico reach his ceiling as a quarterback. I mean, if you look at some of these other young quarterbacks, they've had better skill position players at their disposal that's led to earlier success in their careers. So I think that was probably a big part of why, Nico was good, right? Like, he led them to the playoff, but it's been said a ton. He didn't lose you games. Outside of that throw to Brazel in the Alabama game, though, I'm not sure he won you a lot of games, right? Like, he kind of just did enough at times, and that's fine. Like, that's not being critical of Nico. He's a young player, but man, if Staley and Matthews and some of these guys can really live up to their potential, and I have a good feeling that we're going to be happy with their progress and their development this fall. I don't know what the ceiling for this team is, because you got to see what the defense is going to do, because you've lost some contributors that you got to replace, and the Jermod McCoy situation with ACL, like, it's, to borrow a Butch Jones term, it's complementary football. Everybody's got to do their job, but I like the potential of this offense, even after you lose a Dylan Sampson and some key offensive linemen.
We've already talked about it, Zach, and you're getting me more hyped. Will the wide receivers be this year's defensive backs from last year, where you basically lost the entire room and replaced it with all new guys, and that turned out to be a very good thing. So it does feel that way a little bit. I really like Staley. I mean, Elias is saying it here in the comments. He said, I see Staley continually going up and getting the ball on film, and I've
like, that was a criticism I would have, like Dante Thornton last year at times, is like, but there was a couple times like DBs got in front of him where he could have got there, right? Like, just the physicality that you got to have in the SEC.
And if you can have guys that, as you said, are complementary to each other. I mean, Jalen Hyatt was not hyped up before the season, and he came in and just had that surprise performance. It just feels like there's going to be guys in the set of wide receivers that are going to be like that. Maybe Staley is that guy. We'll see. And obviously, I'm hoping that Nico, with the step forward that he should take, will just be that much better and be able to deliver the ball more effectively. But yeah, we'll find out. Maybe there'll be a little bit of a tape to glean off of spring ball, although it's not going to be on TV, is it? So
no, and
people
they
that
have
are in the stadium will be able to see.
Yeah, there's a scrimmage next Monday night, which obviously there will be no film of, except the little bit that Tennessee puts out on their social media accounts. But we'll hear reports from that night, and we'll get a good grasp of who performed well, who played well. There's always a few standouts, right? Like, there's always that, whether it's Brent Hubbs or somebody from VolQuest, that right after the scrimmage is like, hearing that so-and-so really showed out at the scrimmage, and man, that gets everybody hyped for that guy immediately. So it'll be interesting to hear who those guys are. Like it could be like a Jake Mertlinger shows out as the backup quarterback, and that's good too. I mean, Nico's your guy, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen. If something happens to Nico, you're still trying to go out there and win games. You're not punting the season. I mean, maybe your expectations change a little bit, but you got to have that depth there.
Yeah, I mean, you need depth across the board, so I want to hear all about that. And we'll see. Yeah, I think the scrimmage is probably the best place to start gleaning actual play from these guys. Spring as a whole is not going to teach you a ton in general, but
I think the biggest thing from that scrimmage that I'll be excited to hear about is just the offensive line, how they perform and what that rotation looks like. And if it feels like those jobs are kind of, I don't want to say locked in, but they're trending toward being locked in with like William Satterwhite likely at center and your two transfers at guard and then Lance Hurd and David Sanders at tackle. It feels like that's what's going to happen, barring injury. I think this scrimmage will give us a little more insight in if it's really trending that way.
I hope so. And we'll talk about it. I guess, will it be done by the time we do our show?
No, it's pretty late. I think
okay.
I know the email said that Heupel's media availability, which is always like 20 minutes later than they say it's going to be. It was like 9:30 Monday night.
Oh.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll just have to see how the schedule works out, I guess.
Definitely. So we'll talk about that after it happens. Little score update from baseball: 2-2 in the fourth.
It was.
Should Tennessee fire Tony Vitello? No. We'll talk about that in just 1 second. I did want to circle back. I like this comment from Oliver. He said, I believe that Tennessee's players and coaching staff, going back to basketball, I believe their coaching staff are motivated more than ever to win. And we didn't even mention that. And I just thought it was a great point. I mean, Barnes, he's got to be the most motivated because this guy wants to get that Final Four. He wants that stupid narrative to go away of March Rick. And, with Kentucky, I'm sure he feels plenty of urgency there to beat one of Tennessee's biggest and most bitter rivals. So that is a good point. And I hope that is a piece in the motivation for that team and just adds to the whole thing.
It seems like it is. Jemai Mashak said, hey, we want to win this for Coach Barnes. So
yep,
we'll see where it goes.
We shall see. 3-2 Queens. It's time. We got to let Tony Vitello go. And I think it's the end of the Tony Vitello era, Tennessee. Let's talk about baseball a little bit. So it is kind of funny that that's literally happening as we bring up how good this baseball team actually is.
Midweek games are weird.
They are very weird because you play an entire set of guys that don't play on the weekends.
Yes.
They have different guys at the bottom of the lineup. Gavin Keelan is not playing. He didn't play all this past weekend either. I mean, he's your best hitter. The pitching staff in particular takes a big step back on the Tuesday games, which is probably the biggest contributing factor to Tennessee being down currently to
and
Queens.
The team you're playing is always the most fired up that they've been all season, probably.
Yeah, they are playing in their Super Bowl against the number one team, and you are playing a snoozer Tuesday game.
Yeah, you're just trying to get to Friday or Thursday.
Exactly.
This week.
Weird stuff happens, and some of that weird stuff happened last Tuesday against ETSU, but ETSU is a very good mid-major team. And so it wasn't all that surprising. And it was also come from behind. You led until the very end, and then they came from behind the last 2 innings. It was just kind of a messy thing. And didn't put a lot of stock in that. And then you went to Alabama on what it was a Thursday to Saturday series and lost on that Thursday. And suddenly, is Tennessee done for? It was the narrative trash. They're actually not good. They're actually bad. And then in the next 2 games, without their best hitter, without Gavin Keelan, who has been miraculous all season, they just kind of methodically dominated Alabama in those 2 games. And really, in that loss on that Thursday night, you actually played pretty well overall, but had one inning where the wheels just came flying off.
Yeah, it's classic baseball, right? I mean, especially at the non-pro level, but even at the pro level, you see, I mean, you saw it in the World Series last year in the game that sent the Yankees to Cancun when they had that terrible fifth inning or whatever and gave up all those unearned runs. But
Yep.
I mean, yeah, defensive miscues. You get Liam Doyle's pitch count up. Those are high stress pitches at that point. It's tough. You get runners on base, man. It's just tough. Like the ball gets put in play, weird things can happen. It can really. You can give up some runs in a hurry, and even though you're really still playing well or pitching well, so that was one just kind of weird inning. That outside of that, you probably sweep Alabama there was a double play in that inning, right? That if they would have turned, like, yeah, I mean that you make that play, you execute there, and yeah, you might sweep those guys.
Yeah, you still have the element of your fielding is your weakest point. You have a little bit of a trade-off where Ariel Antigua is probably one of the best shortstops in the SEC, but he can't hit the ball, except on Saturday. He had a 3-hit game, probably the best game of his entire career.
I think he needs
and really came through for you.
Reps, like Tony Vitello said, he just needs reps. I mean that's this game in general, and it's tough to replicate game like reps, right? Like you really just need to be taking the bats, and that's tough, especially when you guys deep of a roster as they do. But his defense is an asset out there for sure.
Yes, and he is just so much more crisp at shortstop than some of the other guys that play there for Tennessee. But if you can get Keelan back, he's not playing tonight. Not sure, lower body injury of some kind, but
his hamstring maybe. Which is annoying because I mean not annoying for him, those are tough to get past sometimes.
But
they're tough to know when you can go all out.
Right, and if you got to bring him in a pinch hitter situation, fine. I don't want your best hitter to be risking injury.
Yeah, go Kirk Gibson it.
Yes, although I do want him to be playing again because of just how powerful his bat is. I think I saw even today he's number 2 in batting average in the SEC currently. So that's a guy you definitely want to get back. But you were able to beat Alabama without him. Thankfully, the next 2 weeks you're playing 2 of the worst, if not the 2 worst teams in the SEC currently. And one in South Carolina, who is pretty bad. They just have they got a new coach this year and just haven't had the time to build up to be more competitive. And then Texas A&M, who has just after making a national title run, I mean they are so bad and have gotten swept 2 weeks in a row. One of those by Alabama, who you just beat.
That whole preseason number 1 thing might be a curse that Tennessee wants to avoid. Is Wake Forest last year?
Kidding.
I mean I think they made the tournament, but they didn't host a regional.
Nope.
And got knocked out. They would have played Tennessee had they came out of that regional, and they didn't.
Yeah, because we were talking about that's gonna be DJ, or it's gonna be DJ Burns.
DJ, throwback to
Burns.
NC State's Final Four run.
Yep, it was gonna be Chase Burns, but he didn't make it ultimately to play Tennessee on their way to a national title. But you have 2 of the worst teams in the SEC in the next 2 weeks. You should, at the very least, win both of those series. You have not lost an SEC series in more than a calendar year now, which is just crazy.
Alabama? Was that the last one?
Yeah, it was Alabama last year.
You mentioned that last week. I think that's the only reason I remember that.
That was the only SEC series you lost all of last season. Very strangely, you avenged that. Now, you haven't lost to Alabama in a major sport in more than a year. It's basketball, women's basketball, football, and now baseball. You have beaten them in all of those. And, when I look at this team, it is still just an embarrassment of riches, just from top to bottom, because you saw guys taking advantage in this game. Hunter Inslee is so clutch. Obviously, he was so good in your national title run, and then your Dean Curley's going down through that lineup in general, like on the mound. Dylan Loy, who I would say I'm kind of perplexed that he's not in contention to be the Sunday guy because he's been so crisp and good in his relief efforts, but he's been so awesome. Then Tegan Coons, a true freshman, is just was phenomenal in that third game. And then the relief that you bring in Craig Krenzel's kid, he was incredible. So it's just, you keep going down the list all the way to these guys that are deep in the bullpen, and you're still finding treasure at those points. It's great, especially if you get Keelan back. You're going to continue to be one of the best teams in America, if not the best team. At the top end of this team's ability, they're probably better than last year's team, which is so crazy.
Especially if you consider the pitching, I think.
Yes. The pitching in particular, I think, kind of takes it over the top. So, yeah, it's good times. Good times at Tennessee. Anything else, Zach, before we head out for the week?
See how it goes this week with Lady Vols. What day did the Lady Vols play? Do you know? They played Texas?
Yep, Texas, who they very nearly beat in Austin earlier this season. A 1 seed in Texas. It's got to be probably Saturday. They've been kind of staggering the days that they play. Saturday at 3:30.
Okay.
So, and that's in Birmingham, Alabama. What a great, beautiful paradise of Birmingham.
Come on. Can we not get better tournament locations than that? There's plenty of options.
I mean, yeah. Like, there's really great arenas in some major cities. Birmingham. Yeah. Anywho, we'll be watching that one. Speaking of an incredible step that you could take, obviously beating Kentucky for the men would be unreal, but beating the number 1 seed in Texas to make it to an Elite Eight for Kim Caldwell in her first year. Whoo!
They're capable. It's just, if they get into a rhythm where they're not hitting shots, it can go with the pace they play. It's kind of like Josh Heupel. We talked about this before. It's kind of like Josh Heupel's, Tennessee offense. If they're going 3 and out, right? Like it can get away from you pretty quick, and that's the case with this Lady Vols team. And it's still a new team, it's a new program, it's a new culture under Kim Caldwell. It's incredible how far she's come, but we have seen they're capable of winning big games and playing well against really good teams. So I think it'll be competitive. We'll see if they can pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, you got that massive kind of defining win against UConn earlier in the season, which
you played South Carolina well.
Yes, and Texas. I mean, Kyle says in the comments here that Texas only won by 4 earlier in the year, and I believe that game was in Austin. So you put up a really admirable effort against Texas in the past. Go out and beat them on a neutral floor and on a neutral floor that's a lot closer to Knoxville than it is to Austin, Texas. So there's something to be said there. Obviously, Lady Vols fans travel pretty well. There is the conflict of the men also having games that weekend. I don't know how much that'll take away from either fan base. But, what an accomplishment that would be if she could pull that off, man. It's just, it really has been very Heupel-esque. That third quarter against Ohio State.
That's what it was against South Carolina. I mean, it's been the third quarter for them.
It was, I believe it went from a 16-point lead, something like that, to tied. And then you ended the third quarter around a 10-point lead. And
they actually took a 1-point lead at one point. I think it was like 57-56 at the end of that run. And then they answered. So,
I mean, it is that volatile with the style of play for Kim Caldwell. So a lot of fun, but also stressful in a way that you don't often see. And as stressful as college basketball is in general, you don't see that too often. So we'll see what happens with everybody. Let's go beat Texas. Let's go beat Kentucky. Let's go beat South Carolina on the baseball field. Tons of incredible opportunities this weekend for Tennessee sports. I mean, truly, if you beat Kentucky and you beat Texas, this is already one of the great sports weekends that will happen for a Tennessee fan. It's right there in your grasp. If you beat Kentucky alone, it's going to be a really good one. So
you can enjoy it for Saturday before the anxiety will get ramped right back up on Sunday, though.
Exactly. Before I so badly want to beat Houston to finally make a Final Four.
Or Purdue.
That's true.
You never know.
Man, what if it ends up being Purdue? Like, genuinely, if you have to play Kentucky, who has beaten you twice and you hate so much, then you beat them, and then you have to play Purdue, who you hate so much, and they have beaten you in all of these massive spots in multiple sports. Good times. Except it really is. It really is incredible times for Tennessee sports. Let's go win those games. Let's have a week. Let's be talking about wins over Texas and Kentucky next week. Maybe a Final Four for both. At least one. Somebody give me a Final Four, please.
Yeah, it would be pretty serendipitous to beat Purdue to get to your first ever Final Four. Like exercise that last demon.
I forget who it was. I think it was Gary Parrish. Maybe I was listening today, and he was like, "Yeah, you could play Purdue and Tennessee fans. I have some news, but they've given Zach Edey one game of eligibility again, and he'll be able to come back for that one Elite Eight game. It's crazy. I can't believe they did that. It almost feels like that would happen. Like genuinely, it kind of feels like that would be a Tennessee thing.
Alberto Osuna cannot play still, but we found a loophole. Zach Edey's got one more
for one game. Edey can come back. Man, it's gonna be a fun weekend. I'm excited. We're gonna talk about it all when we get back here for our next show. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, to comment. It's always so much fun. Couldn't do it without you. I always mean it when I say that. You know where to follow us. If you're here, go hit up all the social medias, subscriptions, notifications, all that jazz. That's it. And we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.